Ever feel like you're living life in the margins? Like you're the background character in everyone else's movie? That was me, Sarah Thompson. 30 years old, product development cog in a sprawling Austin-based consumer goods company, and a single mom to the most incredible 3-year-old boy, Leo. My life wasn't glitz and glamour. It was a meticulously planned ballet of drop-offs, deadlines, and dinosaur chicken nuggets. I wasn't climbing the corporate ladder with stilettos and schmoozing. I was sprinting out at 5 p.m. sharp in Sensible Flats because Leo's daycare charged by the minute for late pickups. And trust me, those minutes added up. They had a name for me, you know. Not to my face, mostly. But the whispers, they travel. The clock-out queen, some called me. Others, less kind, just implied I wasn't a team player. I wasn't the one for after-work drinks that somehow morphed into strategic brainstorming sessions I was never privy to. I didn't linger by the fancy espresso machine, dissecting office politics or pitching my brilliance in casual conversation. My 5 p.m. was sacred. It was Leo time. Dinner, bath, learning ABCs, and the comforting ritual of reading Goodnight Moon until his breathing evened out into that sweet, innocent sleep. Simple, right? Necessary. But in the dog-eat-dog world of corporate America, it apparently made me an anomaly, a curiosity, and eventually, a target. My colleagues, mostly younger, child-free, or with stay-at-home spouses, saw my departure as a lack of commitment. "She's just not hungry enough," I once overheard Mark from marketing mutter to Jessica from sales, his voice dripping with that casual disdain people reserve for those they don't understand. "Always rushing off, like this place isn't important." Important? This job was my lifeline, the roof over Leo's head, the organic apples he loved. It was just that my definition of important had expanded the moment I held him in my arms. Even my direct supervisor, Mr. Garrett, a man in his late 40s who lived and breathed networking events and considered attendance a direct reflection of company loyalty, made his disapproval subtly known. "Sarah," he'd say, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Another early night? Big plans?" His tone always implied my plans couldn't possibly be as significant as the team building happening at O'Malley's pub. He championed the work hard, play hard mantra, conveniently forgetting that for some of us, playing hard meant building Lego towers and refereeing disputes over the blue crayon. "It's all about synergy, Sarah," he'd often pontificate. "You can't spell teamwork without team, can you?" Apparently, you also couldn't spell it without late nights and lukewarm beer, neither of which I had time for. I tried, in the beginning. I'd arrange for a babysitter, rush through Leo's bedtime routine, and show up at those obligatory happy hours, nursing a club soda and trying to look engaged while my mind was replaying the daycare pickup and mentally prepping for the next morning's controlled chaos. But the guilt, the exhaustion, the feeling of being perpetually out of sync. It wasn't worth it. My contributions were in my work, detailed reports, innovative concepts that often got absorbed by others, and a quiet efficiency they mistook for lack of ambition. Little did they know, ambition was simmering, but it was a different kind. It was the ambition of a mother who would move mountains for her child. An ambition that was about to be tested in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The whispers about cutbacks started like a low hum, a discordant note in the usual office symphony of ringing phones and clattering keyboards. The post-pandemic economy had hit everyone hard, and our company, despite its glossy facade, wasn't immune. Sales figures were down, forecasts looked grim, and the tension in the air was thick enough to spread on toast. Suddenly, those networking events Garrett championed felt less like optional schmooze fests and more like desperate attempts to prove one's indispensability. Then came the Monday. It arrived like any other, gray and unforgiving. I just settled at my desk, coffee still too hot to sip, scrolling through emails, when the instant message popped up. Short, stark, impersonal. Sarah, see me in conference room B at 10 a.m. Urgent. G. My stomach did a little flip. Urgent, from Garrett, usually meant a last-minute presentation or a client complaint. But the addition of conference room B, the one usually reserved for less pleasant conversations, sent a chill down my spine. I glanced around. A few colleagues studiously avoided my gaze. Others offered tight, sympathetic smiles that didn't quite mask their own relief. It's a strange human instinct, isn't it? That small, guilty surge of gratitude when the lightning bolt seems aimed at someone else. At precisely 10 a.m., I walked into conference room B. The air was stale, heavy with unspoken words. Garrett was there, looking unusually somber, tie slightly loosened. Beside him sat Brenda from HR, her expression professionally neutral, a file folder placed squarely in front of her. This wasn't about a client complaint. "Sarah, please, sit down," Garrett began, his usual boisterous tone subdued. I sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "Look, Sarah," he continued, steepling his fingers. "You're a good employee. Your work is satisfactory." Satisfactory. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Years of dedication, of carefully crafted reports, of innovative ideas I'd poured my heart into, reduced to satisfactory. But, he paused, and I knew what was coming. The company is in a tough spot. We need people who are willing to give 150%. All in. And I'm not? I managed, my voice surprisingly steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Brenda cleared her throat. "Sarah, it's about flexibility. The current climate demands a certain level of round-the-clock availability. More presence at client events, industry mixers, even weekend strategy sessions. We need individuals who can pivot quickly, stay late without notice." Garrett nodded, piggybacking on Brenda's corporate speak. "And your situation with your son? It makes that difficult, doesn't it? You have commitments. We understand that, of course, but the business has needs." There it was. My situation, my child. The reason I was meticulous, organized, and fiercely protective of my time was now the official HR-sanctioned reason I was being deemed expendable. The irony was a bitter pill. The very thing that fueled my drive, my dedication to providing, was being used as a weapon against me. It felt like a punch to the gut, swift and brutal, knocking the air from my lungs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every late night I had worked from home after Leah was asleep, every weekend I'd spent catching up, every brilliant idea I'd contributed that had been casually claimed by someone else during one of those synergistic beer-fueled brainstorms. I wanted to ask Garrett if his 150% included the emotional labor of raising a human being while also excelling at a demanding job. But I didn't. What was the point? Their minds were made up. The narrative had been written. Sarah Thompson, the single mom, the clock-out queen, was not a team player. She was not flexible. She was, in their eyes, a liability in a time of crisis. I remember nodding, a slow, deliberate movement. I remember the sting behind my eyes, the effort it took to keep my expression neutral. "I understand," I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. There were more platitudes, of course, talk of severance packages, outplacement services, how this was no reflection on your abilities, Sarah, just a business decision. I barely heard them. My world had tilted on its axis. I walked out of that room, out of that office, feeling like I was moving through water. The sympathetic, or were they smug, faces of my colleagues blurring at the edges. The drive to Leo's daycare was a blur. The smile I pasted on for him felt like a cheap, cracking veneer. That night, after he was tucked in, his small hand clutching his favorite stuffed giraffe, the dam finally broke. I sat on his bedroom floor, the moonlight casting long shadows across the room, and I cried. Not just for the job, for the paycheck, but for the casual cruelty of it, the way my life, my responsibilities, my very identity as a mother had been twisted into a justification for my dismissal. Was I useless? Was my dedication to my son truly a flaw in the corporate world? The questions echoed in the silent room, taunting me. For a few dark hours, I let the despair wash over me. I felt small, insignificant, discarded. But then, I looked at Leo, his face serene in sleep, his breath a soft, rhythmic comfort. And something shifted. That fierce, protective love, the one they'd used against me, began to bubble up, not as a weakness, but as a wellspring of strength. No, a voice whispered from deep inside, a voice I hadn't realized was so strong. You are not useless. You are a mother. You are a creator, and you are not done. They thought they could break me, dismiss me, relegate me to the footnotes of their corporate story. They thought my commitment to my son was a handicap. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. Because that night, surrounded by moonlight and stuffed animals, I didn't just mourn a lost job. I started to build a new future. A future where being a mother wasn't a liability, but my greatest asset. The clock-out queen was about to stage a coup. The first few days were a strange cocktail of grief, anger, and a surprising, almost exhilarating sense of freedom. No more frantic morning rushes, no more office politics, no more Garrett's condescending smiles. But the freedom was tinged with fear. The severance wouldn't last forever, and Leo's needs were immediate. I could have hit the job boards, polished my resume, tried to slot myself back into another indifferent corporate machine. But the thought left me cold. What was the point of trading one set of dismissive colleagues for another? One boss who saw my motherhood as an inconvenience for another? Number. The answer wasn't to find another cog-sized hole to fit into. The answer was to build something myself. Something that mattered. Something they couldn't take away. And then it hit me. An idea I'd been nurturing for months. A little seed of a concept that had been pushed to the back burner by the daily grind and the assumption that no one would listen. During my time in product development, I'd noticed a gap in the market. Our company, like so many others, chased affluent demographics with premium products and aspirational branding. But what about everyone else? What about families like mine, struggling to make ends meet, who still deserved quality, who cared about the environment, but couldn't afford the hefty price tags that usually came with eco-friendly or ethically sourced? I envisioned a line of essential household goods, cleaning supplies, personal care items, pantry staples that were affordable, effective, and, crucially, packaged sustainably. Not just less plastic, but truly innovative, biodegradable materials, refill systems, concentrated formulas to reduce shipping weight and waste. Products for real people, with real budgets, who wanted to make good choices without breaking the bank. It was a niche nobody in our company seemed interested in, deeming it low margin or not sexy enough. But I knew the need was there. I was that target demographic. So, the nights after Leo was asleep, the kitchen table became my new office. Instead of collapsing in front of the TV, I was fueled by a different kind of energy. I dove into research, my laptop glowing in the quiet darkness. I studied sustainable packaging innovations, researched ethical sourcing for ingredients, analyzed competitor pricing, and sketched out product designs. I devoured articles on market trends, consumer psychology, and bootstrap startups. My brain, which had felt so stifled and undervalued, was suddenly on fire. I created spreadsheets that would have made Garrett's eyes water, not with boredom, but with their sheer comprehensiveness. Financial projections, cost-benefit analyses, market penetration strategies. I even taught myself basic graphic design to create mock-ups of my product line, which I tentatively named Terra Essentials. Simple, earthy, to the point. There were moments of doubt, of course. Late nights when exhaustion gnawed at me, when Leo would wake up crying from a bad dream, and I'd rock him back to sleep, wondering if I was chasing a fantasy. The voices of Garrett and Brenda would echo in my mind. Not flexible? Commitments. But then, I'd look at my growing pile of research, the increasingly detailed business plan taking shape, and a fierce determination would settle back in. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. It was about building something that aligned with my values, something that could make a tangible difference, however small. 2 months. 2 intense, sleep-deprived, coffee-fueled months. And there it was. A comprehensive, meticulously researched, passionately written proposal for Terra Essentials. It wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a viable business plan. Now came the terrifying part. What to do with it? My first instinct was to try and get back in front of Garrett, to show him what he'd dismissed. But the thought felt demeaning. Why beg for validation from the very people who'd cast me aside? This was bigger than Garrett. This deserved a bigger stage. I remembered Mrs. Michelle Young, the CEO of the entire corporation. A distant, almost mythical figure I'd only ever seen from afar at company-wide meetings. She had a reputation for being tough, demanding, but also innovative and, crucially, fair. She'd risen through the ranks herself, and rumor had it she had a soft spot for bold ideas, even if they came from unconventional sources. It was a long shot, a ridiculously long shot. A recently fired, satisfactory employee from product development bypassed her entire chain of command to pitch a radical new product line directly to the CEO? It was laughably audacious. But what did I have to lose? My job was already gone. My dignity, however, was still intact, and it was whispering, "Go for it." So, I bypassed Garrett. I bypassed HR. I bypassed the layers of middle management that had always felt like impenetrable walls. I found Mrs. Young's direct email address, thank you, LinkedIn Premium trial, and, with a heart pounding like a drum solo, I drafted the most important email of my life. I attached my proposal, took a deep breath, and hit send. Then, I waited. The silence from the executive floor was deafening. Days crawled by. I started to second-guess myself. Maybe I was delusional? Maybe Garrett was right. 3 agonizing days later, an email landed in my inbox. The sender, Michelle Young. My hands trembled so violently I could barely click it open. "Ms. Thompson, your proposal for Terra Essentials is compelling. I'd like to discuss it further. My assistant will be in touch to arrange a meeting. Please come to the 10th floor." The 10th floor. Executive territory. A place I'd only ever glimpsed from the elevator, feeling like an outsider looking in. Now I was being summoned. The meeting was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. No condescension, no veiled criticisms about my situation. Mrs. Young, flanked by her VPs of marketing and operations, listened intently as I, nerve-wracked but resolute, walked them through Terra Essentials. I spoke not just about profit margins and market share, but about families, about sustainability, about making a real difference. I spoke from the heart, from my own experiences, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly heard. "You're Sarah Thompson, the one from product development?" Mrs. Young asked, her gaze sharp and appraising. "Yes, ma'am, I am," I replied, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I'm impressed, Ms. Thompson. Very impressed. This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking initiative we need. We want you to head a pilot program. 3 months, 5 branches. Let's see what Terra Essentials can do." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. A pilot program? Me? In charge? It was more than I'd dared to hope for. It was a lifeline, a vindication, a breathtaking opportunity, all rolled into one. Walking back into my old department to gather a small, hand-picked team, people I knew were talented but often overlooked, much like I had been, was an experience I'll never forget. The whispers were different now. No longer tinged with pity or disdain, but with curiosity, with a dawning respect. Garrett watched me from his office, his expression unreadable. I offered a polite nod. No gloating. Not yet. The work was just beginning. The next 3 months were a blur of focused intensity. We weren't just launching products. We were building a brand from the ground up, on a shoestring budget and an accelerated timeline. Late nights became the norm again, but this time they felt different. They were my late nights, fueled by passion and purpose, not obligation. Leo sometimes came with me on weekends, helping by organizing crayon supplies in my temporary office, a small, forgotten storeroom they'd cleared out for us. He was my tiny, unwitting mascot, a constant reminder of why I was doing this. We faced setbacks, of course. Supply chain hiccups, skeptical store managers, marketing materials that needed endless revisions. But with each challenge, my small team and I grew stronger, more resourceful. We were the underdogs, and we fought like it. Then came launch day. Seeing Terra Essentials on actual store shelves, watching the first customers pick up the brightly colored, eco-friendly packages, their faces registering interest, then approval. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. And then, the sales reports started coming in. The initial numbers were good. Better than good, they were astounding. Within the first month, Terra Essentials wasn't just meeting targets, it was smashing them. The 5 pilot branches were struggling to keep the products in stock. Word of mouth was spreading like wildfire. People loved the quality, they loved the price, and they loved the story behind it, the commitment to sustainability, the focus on real families. By the end of the 3-month pilot, Terra Essentials had exceeded its projected revenue by a staggering 220%. 220%. Local supermarkets, initially hesitant, were now clamoring for distribution. We were getting calls from regional chains, then national ones. The media started sniffing around, intrigued by this overnight success story. Small articles began appearing. The eco-friendly line that's changing how families shop. Single mom's vision revolutionizes consumer goods. They conveniently left out the part about me being fired for being a single mom. But hey, I wasn't complaining. The narrative was shifting, and I was the one holding the pen. Mrs. Young called a company-wide meeting to announce the official, full-scale launch of Terra Essentials. It was held in the main auditorium, the same one where I'd sat countless times, feeling invisible. This time, I wasn't in the audience. I was on the stage, standing next to Mrs. Young. The room was packed. I could see my old department, Garrett looking particularly uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. I saw the faces of colleagues who had once pitied me, now looking at me with a mixture of awe and perhaps a touch of envy. Mrs. Young beamed, her voice resonating with genuine pride. Terra Essentials is not just a product line, it's a testament to innovation, to listening to our customers, and to the incredible talent we have within this company. And the driving force behind this phenomenal success is one of our own. She turned to me, her smile warm and genuine. We haven't just found a winning product, we found an exceptional leader. It is my distinct pleasure to announce that, effective next month, Sarah Thompson will be appointed Vice President of the Austin branch, overseeing the continued expansion of Terra Essentials and new sustainable product development. A wave of applause washed over me. It was deafening, overwhelming. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes scanned the room, landing for a fleeting second on Garrett. He was clapping, of course, a strained, almost pained smile plastered on his face. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman he deemed not flexible enough, not committed enough, was now his superior. I stepped up to the microphone, my voice shaking only slightly. "Thank you," I began, my gaze sweeping across the room. "Thank you for believing in this idea, for believing in me. Terra Essentials is more than just products. It's about making a difference, about showing that good business and good values can go hand in hand. And it's about proving that sometimes our greatest perceived weaknesses can become our most profound strengths." I didn't need to spell it out. They understood. Life changed, of course. My schedule was still demanding, perhaps even more so, but it was on my terms. My office was no longer a forgotten storeroom, but a corner suite with a view I often shared with Leo, who now had a designated art corner filled with company-supplied and sustainably sourced crayons. The dynamic with my former colleagues shifted dramatically. The whispers didn't stop, but their content changed. "Did you hear Sarah landed the Kroger account? She's a powerhouse. I always knew she had it in her." That last one always made me chuckle internally. One morning, a few weeks after my promotion, there was a hesitant knock on my open office door. It was Garrett, holding 2 cups of coffee. An olive branch, perhaps? Or just a subordinate trying to curry favor with the new boss. "Sarah," he said, his voice a little too jovial. "Just thought you might need this. Heard you were in early." He placed a cup on my desk. "You know," he added, leaning against the doorframe, trying for that old, familiar camaraderie. "I always knew you had potential. Always believed in your abilities." I took a slow sip of the coffee. It was surprisingly good. I looked at him, a calm, gentle smile playing on my lips. No anger, no resentment, just a quiet, unshakable sense of self-assurance. "Thank you, Garrett," I said, my voice even. "I appreciate that. And you know what? I always believed in myself too." His smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he quickly recovered. "Well, great. Just great. Let me know if you need anything." He backed out, almost bumping into the doorframe. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to remind him of that awful Monday morning, of his dismissive words, of the pain he'd inflicted. My success, the thriving Terra Essentials line, my new title, Leo's bright future. That was my response. It was silent, it was powerful, and it was undeniably sweet. They called me the clock-out queen, thinking it was an insult, a sign of my limitations. They didn't realize that every time I clocked out to be with my son, I was clocking into a different kind of hustle, a different kind of dream. They saw a single mother struggling to keep up. They failed to see a warrior sharpening her sword. My story isn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It's about resilience. It's about rewriting the narrative they try to force upon you. It's about understanding that your circumstances don't define your potential, and that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. So, to anyone out there feeling overlooked, undervalued, or defined by someone else's narrow perception, don't let their whispers become your truth. Let your actions be your voice. Let your success be your answer. Because the best revenge isn't loud and angry. It's living well, thriving, and proving, quietly but unequivocally, that they were wrong. And trust me, that kind of victory, it's the sweetest kind of all.